This one should keep us all thinking. This is a true story of something that happened just a few years ago at UST. There was a professor of philosophy there who was a deeply committed atheist. His primary goal for one required class was to spend the entire semester to prove that God couldn't exist. His students were always afraid to argue with him because of his impeccable logic. Sure, some had argued in class at times, but no one had ever really gone against him because of his reputation. At the end of every semester, on the last day, he would say to his class of 300 students, "If there's anyone here who still believes in Jesus, stand up." In 20 years, no one had ever stood up. They knew what he was going to do next. He would say, "Because anyone who believes in God is a fool." If God existed, he could stop this piece of chalk from hitting the ground and breaking. Such a simple task to prove that he is God, and yet he can't do it. And every year he would drop the chalk onto the tile floor of the classroom, and it would shatter into 100 pieces. All of the students would do nothing but stop and stare. Most of the students thought that God couldn't exist. Certainly, a number of Christians had slipped through, but for 20 years they had been too afraid to stand up. Well, a few years ago, there was a freshman who happened to enroll. He was a Christian and had heard the stories about his professor. He was required to take the class for his major and he was afraid. But for 3 months, the semester, he prayed every morning that he would have the courage to stand up no matter what the professor said or what the class thought. Nothing they said could ever shatter his faith, he hoped. Finally, the day came. The professor said, "If there's anyone here who still believes in God, stand up." The professor and the class of 300 people looked at him shocked as he stood up at the back of the classroom. The professor shouted, "You fool! If God existed, he would keep this piece of chalk from breaking when it hit the ground." He proceeded to drop the chalk. But as he did, it slipped out of his fingers, of his shirt, cut onto the pleat of his pants, down his leg, and of his shoe. As it hit the ground, it simply rolled away unbroken. The professor's jaw dropped as he stared at the chalk. He looked up at the young man and then ran out of the lecture hall. The young man who had stood proceeded to walk to the front of the room and shared his faith in Jesus for the next half hour. 300 students stayed and listened as he told of God's love for them and of his power through Jesus. You have 2 choices now. Pretend you never listened this, or pass this along to your Christian and non-Christian friends, giving them encouragement we all need every day. When you chose option 2, you have chosen to stand up. In light of the many jokes we tell to one another for a laugh, this is a little different. This is not intended to be a joke. It's not funny, it's intended to get you thinking. Isn't it funny how simple it is for people to trust God and then wonder why the world's going to hell? Isn't it funny how we believe what newspapers say but question the Bible says? Isn't it funny how everyone wants to go to heaven, provided they do not have to believe, think, say, or do anything the Bible says? Or is it scary? Is it funny how someone can say, "I believe in God," but still follow Satan, who, by the way, also believes in God? Isn't it funny how you can send 1,000 jokes through email and they spread like wildfire? But when you start sending messages regarding the Lord, people think twice about sharing. Isn't it funny how the lewd, crude, vulgar, and obscene pass freely through cyberspace? But the public discussion of Jesus is suppressed in the school and workplace. Isn't it funny how someone can be so fired up for Christ on Sunday, but be an invisible Christ the rest of the week? Are you laughing? Isn't it funny how when you go to tell someone this, you won't? Because you're not sure what they believe or what they will think of you for telling them. Isn't it funny how I can be more worried about what other people think of me than what God thinks of me? Will you pass this on? I did. You must.